Hello, everybody. And welcome from Indiana, snowy Indiana. It's snowing this morning, believe it or not. And I'm not a fan. I like snow maybe once a year, but I have to work outside in it, and I would rather work outside in 100-degree weather than work in the snow. Anyways, but it's nice to look at. So, I want to share with you guys a message. Hopefully, you're encouraged by it. Um, Many of you, most people know the story of David and Goliath, and I don't have to read it all to you. Um, but I want to talk about facing your giants or facing your Goliaths in your life. And I wrote down, I looked up what Goliath meant, and actually it means passage, revolution, heap. It means revolution. And I thought that was interesting. It means revolution. What is revolution? It's a forcible overthrow of a government or social order in favor of a new system. It's a sudden, radical, complete change. Kind of sounds like today of all things. That's what Goliath means, revolution. And the spirit of Goliath is here in America even right now. We have Goliath problems in our country. I think everybody, you can look around and you can know that we have Goliath issues. We don't just have big issues, we have Goliath issues. When you see videos, I saw this video last night, these people just going, I don't know if it's a Target or grocery store, just throwing in tons of laundry detergent and just stealing a bunch of groceries, like $1,600 of groceries. They had 2 getaway cars, of course, no license plates. And they can just do that because they get thrown in jail and they get out in 3 days and they just get on house arrest or community service or whatever it is. They don't have no consequences for what they do. Melanie was at a Hobby Lobby the other day, and two people walked out, full carts, or not the other day, like a few months ago, and they walked out with a few carts, and they got in their vehicle, no license plate, of course, and they just drive off. We have Goliath issues in our country right now. It's Some of our liberal universities, they can just change their name to Goliath University. That's what you could basically call it. And Goliath, he was 9 feet 6 inches. He was a lot taller than me, about 4 feet taller than me. 2.5 feet taller than Shaquille O'Neal. I don't know if Goliath played basketball at that time. If he did, he probably sat for the national anthem. So there's not much good when you think of the name Goliath, unless it's a hamburger that you can't eat or something because it's so big. Even I read about this guy with he had his pet spider. I think it was I guess it was just a tarantula, but there's this spider called a Goliath bird-eating spider. It's even bigger than a tarantula. And the Goliath spider, including the tarantula, they can take their hairs on their legs and shoot them at your face, these barbed hairs, and they'll get in your eyes, and you can't get them out of your eyes. And this guy had this pet tarantula, and it shot him in the face with these barbed hairs. And for weeks he had him in his eyes, and they couldn't get him out. The doctor couldn't get him out, so they had to give him some kind of steroid to get these barbed hairs out of his eyes. And there's in these Goliath spiders, the same thing. They just shoot these hairs off at their a threat that's coming against them. And most of these spiders, they live down in Brazil, so that's a good thing. That's why I chose to live in Indiana and not Brazil. So I don't have to deal with those. But there's not much good when it comes to Goliath, with the name Goliath. And Goliath, he comes out and he challenges the people of God day after day, and he challenges Israel, and he has no consequences, and people are scared to death, and they're running away. And we see the same spirit today in challenging everything that's right, everything that's Christian, everything that is evil is being called good, good is being called evil, everything's upside down. And that same spirit of Goliath is here in America challenging what's right. But sometimes in our own life, we have to face Goliaths as well. We have to face giants in our life. It can be giant problems, giant dilemmas, giant tests, giant trials, giant struggles. And we have to go through these things and we have to face them in our life, whether we want to or not. And sometimes God leads us right to giants in our life that we have to face. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense what we're even going through. And we have to face those giants. And most of the time when we face giants, they're not like the Jolly Green Giant that is standing up and with his can of green beans with a cheesy grin on his face. It's usually not the Jolly Green Giant. Now, myself, I gotta say, I always try to invest in beans because their stocks are always going up. And so that was a dumb joke, but I had to throw that in there. God leads you to giants, and most of the time we have to fight our giants, and we have to rise up and fight them. And many times, it says David, he fought Goliath in the valley. And in our lives, we have to face these Goliath problems and tests and trials in our valleys of all places. It's in the hard times, and we have to face them, and we have to overcome them. See, it's one thing to believe in Jesus. It's another thing to be an overcomer. And we must have overcomers in this hour that we're in. The book of Revelation, it talks about the churches, the 7 churches, and every time Jesus says, "He who overcomes, I'll bless them. I'll do something for them. He's looking for overcomers." And so we have to face sometimes Goliaths in the valleys. There's already hard stuff going on, and now we got to face Goliath. But we have to face it. We have to rise up and be strong and courageous, and we have to face these things and overcome them in our life. It talks about David's mighty men and what the great things they did in the Bible. And I think it was Benaiah. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right. He went into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. So it's already snowing out, and there's a pit, and there's a lion in a pit. And he goes down and he kills the lion in the pit on a snowy day. Now that's pretty awesome. And God's looking for people like that. Because there's a lot of people that are just giving up, giving into depression, giving into defeat, giving into despair. And we're to be people that rise up and face Goliath in spite of the valley that we're in. And, my good friend Jonathan Wallace, he's a preacher, and he was in prison in the Congo in Africa, and he had a vision, and I've thought about this so many times in my own life, and he has this vision of this ball of rope, and he sees it day after day of this rope, and this rope is in a tangled absolute mess, and there was no way to tell the beginning from how the beginning could get to the end because it was all twisted and tangled and just an absolute mess. And God tells Jonathan, Jonathan, these are my ways. These are my ways. And that's God's ways sometimes for your life and my life. They're like that ball of rope, all twisted and tangled. It doesn't even make sense, but that's his ways. There was this job we did. I cleaned windows, and sometimes we hang Christmas lights for people. And there was this job 6 or 7 years ago at this townhome complex, and we were putting lights on their clubhouse, this huge clubhouse. And they brought out all these lights, and they said, we've got the lights, and everything works, and everything's great. They brought out these lights in garbage bags, and they were probably this big. just a tangled, they were tied in knots. They were completely just this ball. We couldn't even untangle them. And we're like, there's no way we're doing this. We would laugh about it. This is such a joke. And yet, this tangled ball of mess, half of them didn't even work. We couldn't even, it would have taken hours and hours and hours to untangle them. That's kind of how God's ways are in our life. And David wasn't expecting to face a giant. He wasn't expecting to face Goliath. He was delivering snacks. He had a snack delivery vehicle or a cart. He was driving a snack cart. And his dad sent him out and said, I want you to bring these cheese and crackers, or it was like 10 cheeses. He was bringing cheeses because cheeses will change your life, just so you know. And so he's got this snack delivery cart he's bringing to his brothers. And suddenly Goliath appears, and everybody runs away, and they're scared. And he appears when David's there, and David just gets thrown into facing a Goliath. He wasn't looking to face Goliath, but he was called to face Goliath. And in your life, you're not looking to face giants. You're not looking to face that stuff, but you're called to face them. And so fear is on the people, and they're completely afraid, and they're running away. You know, fear is contagious. If you're around people that are always, that are just fearful, it's contagious, just like faith is contagious. And you got to be around people that have faith. You got to be around people that increase your faith. If they just increase fear, it's maybe not a good thing to be around them. And I was reading this story about these honeybees, and you guys have all heard of the murder hornets. They only live in the northwest part of Washington State, which is nice. But there's these bees. This murder hornet comes, and they can destroy a whole honeybee's nest. And these bees surround this murder hornet, and they begin to, like in this like ball, they got this murder hornet, and they begin to just shake and vibrate in this with this murder hornet in the middle. And the temperature increases by them all joining together and doing this to 116 degrees. By them just in this intense ball all together in this vibrating motion of they began to roast the murder hornet alive, and they killed the murder hornet by all coming together. You know, and I was thinking about it. Prayer is good, and it's good you pray, but there's something about intense prayer. And just like those bees that begin to shake and just begin to surround that murder hornet, the temperature increased. The atmosphere changed when they got intense. And the atmosphere changes when there's intense prayer. And when you pray with intensity, the enemy gets roasted alive, basically, is what happens. And it's like that murder hornet. And sometimes your prayers have got to be intense, and suddenly something happens when you're intense. And so finally, just the last couple thoughts here is God, he roots for the underdog. He roots for the Davids, and he has he has people like David in this time. And Saul comes to him, and he tries to put his armor on him. And it would be like me going into a big and tall store and trying on clothes. It would be absolutely ridiculous. Or a 5-year-old trying on his dad's suit. That's what it would be like. And David says, I can't go in these. This is going to hinder me. And you can't go in somebody else's calling or their anointing or their you can't imitate what somebody else is doing, even what they're called to do. You are called to do something by faith that other people aren't called to do. And if you try to put what somebody else is called to do, or you're trying to imitate how they're doing it, it will actually hinder you from overcoming your giants in your life. And David went with no armor. All he did was grab 5 stones, and it says he ran towards the giant. See, you're either going to run from the giant or you're going to run to it. And David ran to it, and he overcame. And other people, they can tell you to fight a certain way, or they're trying to put stuff on you. If you put that stuff on you, it will hinder your walk. And finally, just in closing, there's a story of the USS Indianapolis that got sank in the Pacific years ago. Only 317 people survived. A torpedo got hit by multiple torpedoes by the Japanese. And there was one man, Robert Goss, and 317 survived. That's how we get the 317 area code in Indianapolis here to honor them. And one man, Robert Goss, they were in the ocean for 5 days, and many of them got eaten by sharks. And he called it his 109 hour conversation with the Lord. And he was a great godly man. And he said they were huddled together for days, and they prayed, that God would. He prayed. His prayer was, God, I believe you that they're going to find us. And he said, the other men, many of the other men didn't believe, but he believed. And anyways, he was separating a fight between the men after days. They had no food, no sleep, no water. Two men were fighting. He was trying to break up the fight, and a wave hit him in the face. He got salt water. He swallowed salt water accidentally, and he began to go out of his mind. And they said anybody who drifted away from the group would be eaten by sharks. They would come within 3 feet of their circle, but they wouldn't come any closer. But if you drifted away, they'd be eaten by sharks. And he began to drift away. He was out of his mind. And he drifted 100 yards away from the other group, and he says it was an absolute miracle. He didn't get eaten by a shark. And he was in and out of his right mind. And he says, God, he says, I believe you to save us. I need your help right now. I need you to help me. You got to get on the ball, Lord, and help me. And so when he prayed, he said the ocean was 2.5 miles deep at that point. And he said it was like the ocean floor came up to his feet, and he sat there and he stood there for 2-3 hours and just was able to rest. He says it was totally supernatural, and he was standing on solid ground in the middle of one of the deepest parts of the Pacific Ocean. And he sat there for hours, and he was able to regain his strength. And he said he swam back 100 yards to the men, and then a couple hours later, they were rescued. And in the middle of his Goliath situation, where men had died, and where he was even, it looked hopeless for him, he still believed God, and he believed that he would be rescued, and he believed in his Goliath situation. And in your situation, in your Goliath problems, in our Goliath problems we're going to have to face, be strong and courageous and believe, because he's the same God that he was for David, and he's the same God for us today. And he's raising up giant slayers in this hour. Yes, there's giants, there's giant problems in our land, there's Goliath issues, but we're going to face them, and we're going to be overcomers and not just believers. And thank God there's a remnant of people that are going to be part of that giant slaying company in this hour. So, amen. God bless you guys, and hope you have a great week. Hopefully this encourages you. If it does, say something in the comments. Smash that subscribe button and tell your friends about the page. So, God bless. See ya.